All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, it is still very early in this MLB season here in 2025, but you can't ignore the fact right now that the New York Mets are rolling. Following today's win over the Philadelphia Phillies, the Mets have now won their last 7 games. And if you're the Mets, you've got to feel good about yourselves because you just swept a 3 game series from the rival Phillies. I said it before and I will continue to say it. It is still very early in this MLB season, but New York was able to just put a little bit of distance between themselves and the Phillies as the Phils are now leaving, and at this point they probably have already left the Big Apple. But now they find themselves down 5 games to the Mets in the NL East. The big bat of Pete Alonso so far for the New York Mets as he is playing like an MVP early on. We saw Pete step up once again today for the Metropolitans. He got the game tying hit in the bottom of the 10th, and he also scored the game winning run this afternoon as well. We saw the slow start once again from Francisco Lindor, but he has picked it up very quickly. Okay, and we have seen his contributions throughout this for the Mets through the early stages of this season. And of course, if you're the Mets, you've got to like where this is going right now because you're doing this so far, and Juan Soto has yet to get going. And at some point, Juan Soto will. Okay, Juan Soto is one of those guys. He has the ability when he's locked in to put a lineup on his bat for about a month. Okay, that's how good he is. So if other guys like Alonso and Lindor are doing this right now, can you imagine how potent that the Mets lineup will look like and be when Juan Soto gets it going? New York, to their credit, they're building off of last year's postseason run. Over the second half of the season, there probably wasn't a team playing better baseball in the 2024 season than the Metropolitans. They got into the postseason as the final wild card in the NL. And then from there, they rode that momentum to the NLCS before they lost to the eventual World Series champion, Los Angeles Dodgers. New York has gotten off to a hot start right now. Matter of fact, at 18-7, the Mets right now have the best record in baseball. And for Mets manager Carlos Mendoza, he's pushing all the right buttons right now because he's getting quality starts from his pitching staff. He's also getting solid contributions from his bullpen, and it's also timely hitting because it almost seems like, aside from Alonso, aside from Lindor, it seems like it's a different guy every single night. Today's game, the game-winning hit was provided by Starling Marte. We're starting to see Mark Vientos get out of his early season funk. Youngsters such as Brett Beatty and Luis Angel Acuna are also coming up with big hits, as is Luis Torrens, in the presence of starting catcher Francisco Alvarez, who is out with an injury. And of course, if your Mets team owner Steve Cohen, you've got to like what you're seeing on the field from your team, but you also have to like and appreciate what you're getting from your fan base. Cohen has gone out there, he's spent the money to try to improve this team, and it's still April. Okay, it's not overly warm in the Northeast. It's starting to get there. Okay, we're starting to get some good spring days around the country, but nonetheless, you see the folks in New York, they've been gravitating to the Mets. You go back to the 4 game series over the weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with the St. Louis Cardinals. The Mets basically had a sellout almost every game, and the weather was not great for all of those games. And then here, a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday series in April against the Philadelphia Phillies, and they also drew big crowds. So, what do you think is going to happen in those summer months like June, July, and August, as far as folks coming out to the park in Flushing, New York, to support their Metropolitans? On the flip side, for the Phillies, it's still early, like I said, but they've got to find a way to bounce back. Philadelphia has now dropped their last four, and they're only a game over 500. But again, like I said, still very early. We have not even flipped the calendar to the month of May yet. And I know if you're Philly, you wanted to come in here first and foremost and win the series. You didn't do that. You wanted to at least get a game, and you didn't do that. So now you've spotted the Mets a 5-game lead. But the beauty of it is it's a very long season, and the Phillies can just look back to last season. At this point, the Mets were also rings, okay, and then we saw them from the end of May on for the rest of the season. The great baseball that they did play. So if you're Philadelphia, you've got plenty of opportunities ahead of you. Granted, it's changed due to the fact that the divisional foes don't play each other as much as they used to. Not a fan of this whole interleague all season long. That's just my 2 cents again. But nonetheless, if you're Philadelphia, you've got to go out there and take care of those opportunities when you have them. I think the Phillies will be okay. All right. If you're Philadelphia, it sucked to lose. Of course, it sucked to get swept by your arch rival. And this was a team that this is the first time that you're facing them since the divisional round. And of course, Philadelphia came into that series with very high hopes, looking to make a deep postseason run. That was not the case as they were upset by the Mets in 4 games in the divisional round last October. And now you turn around this time and you lose this 3-game series. A lot of it, it came down to the bullpen, and the Phillies bullpen has not been good so far this season. That is something that has to improve. Also, if you're the Phils, Aaron Nola, you know, he pitched better in this series than his high ERA would lead you to believe. And Aaron Nola did give the Phillies a quality start in the first game of the series. Clearly, it didn't work out. And if you're Philadelphia, you definitely wanted to get that W today with Zach Wheeler on the mound, but that was not the case. Once again, as Doug Peterson matched him blow for blow for the most part. Peterson went 5 1/3. Wheeler went 6 innings and struck out 9. And then, of course, unfortunately for Philadelphia, their bullpen gave it up late. But nonetheless, too much talent on this Philadelphia team. That's why I said it's still early. The Phillies are going to get it going. They're going to hit. There's too much talent there. Not trying to sound like a broken record. Bryson Stott, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, Nick Castellanos, Trey Turner. Pick your poison as far as dealing with this Philadelphia team. They're going to get it going at some point sooner rather than later if you're the Phils. But of course, you just don't want the Mets if you're Philadelphia to put too much distance between you. And of course, for Philly, they're licking their wounds right now. They've lost their last four. Now they've got to go to Wrigley this weekend and take on the Cubs in a 3-game set. And the Cubs are playing some darn good baseball of their own, while the Mets, they're going to be in DC to take on the Washington Nationals as they look to keep this thing rolling. If you're the New York Mets, just go out there and continue to win series. The only series that the Mets have not won so far this season, they dropped 2 out of 3 in the Twin Cities to Minnesota, and then they dropped 2 out of 3 to begin the season on the road against the Houston Astros. They've taken care of their business against everybody else. If you're Philadelphia, like I said, this is I'm not going to say it's a gut punch, but it's nonetheless one of those where you know what, you want to try to stop the bleeding of this 4-game losing streak and try to get back on track. It's one of those where yes, you were swept if you're Philadelphia. There's no way to dance around that, but you have to take away the positives because most of these games were very close. A play here or a play there uh, probably was a difference in this 3-game set. So if you're Philadelphia, you have to take some confidence out of that. You have to take some solace out of that. You got to look to forget about this and try to move on because, again, there's plenty of baseball ahead of you. But nonetheless, the Mets, a lot of people wanted to question whether this team was going to live up to the hype, if you will, after last year's postseason run. Of course, the big signing of Juan Soto. It's still early in this season, okay, but the Mets are legit. And at the end of the day, when this MLB season began, or before this MLB season began, I said Mets, Braves, and Phillies were going to be duking it out for the top spot in the National League. Atlanta, of course, they got off to that slow start, but they're trying to dig out of that hole. They're 10-14 coming into play today, and the Braves are 7.5 back at the back of the Mets. The Braves are starting to get going, and I think Atlanta will close that gap. I think Philadelphia, after having this tough week, if you will, or tough 3-game series against the Mets, they're going to get back on track at some point and they're going to close that gap. I said it when the season began, and I'm going to stand by it. This is going to be a dogfight. This is going to be a battle throughout for the top spot in this division between the Braves, the Mets, and the Phillies. Of course, the Braves have spotted the Phillies and the Mets a little bit of space. Right now, even for the slow start that the Braves have had, they're only 2.5 behind the Phillies. And of course, like I said before, everybody is looking up to the Mets. But I think at the end of the day, this is going to be a battle. You've got 3 good teams. You got a lot of good talent. And again, the Mets are flexing their muscles. And the scary part is at some point, Juan Soto will get it going. But nonetheless, if you're the Mets, you got to feel good about this. You did the little things in this series. You continue to find a way to make the big hits. They're getting better contributions out of the starting pitching than most people expected them to get this season. I think their starting pitching has been a key for the Mets because it's given them an opportunity, and of course the clutch bats of the likes of Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor. But nonetheless, big time statement by the Mets early on. They got the 3-game sweep. They're rolling. The Phillies are stumbling, and let's see where both of these NL East rivals go from here. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks. If you check this out and you like what you heard and saw, please feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. It is greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. And for all of you football fans, definitely check out this channel tomorrow evening, as I'll be having some live segments here as well as on Instagram discussing the NFL draft. And for all of you folks out there on Instagram, just like it is on the X, if you follow me, I'll follow you right back. You can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. And also, if you're on Facebook, check us out at the Sports Depot 365. But until next time, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.